Shalum. Shalom and welcome. Welcome to White Robes family. My name is Symmanayah, and this is the 85th installment. This is the 85th installment of White Robes family series. It is a series of messages that I am compelled to present before an awakening nation. In this installment, I want to bring your attention to gathering the seed, and I will present a case of how this is related to discerning one of the purposes of the Feast of Harvest. But before I get into this, my brothers and sisters, let me ask you this question. How would you feel if doctors caused the men among Yashar'al to be sterile? How would you feel if there was no regard to the ability to procreate, to build the nation up, to have children? Hold that thought. Just in case that might be something you can't grasp, consider this. How many of us have ever eaten a fruit and spit the seeds out, threw the seeds away, with no regards to the fact that those seeds can be used to plant more fruit? How many of us have witnessed individuals harvest grain, fruit, vegetables, with no regards to the seeds of the plants? I submit to you, my brothers and sisters, that one of the reasons that the tribe of Lewi, or the Levites, as the priests received a tithe, is because they was charged to command the teachings, to guard the teachings that should go from generation to generation, to preserve our way of life, to ensure our growth in worship and obedience to the Almighty Father. I say to you, O Yashar'al, there are so many things that we have taken for granted. And I will submit the case of why gathering the seed is important and how it connects to the Feast of Harvest. But before I go into details, O Yashar'al, and speak more on this matter, let me read the following. Warning and disclaimer. The information contained in White Robes family represent instructions and warnings to individuals who believe they are drawn by the Almighty Creator Yahuah to Yahusha Mashyach, referencing John 6:44. The content presented centers around end-time realities. Please be advised this site is not intended for children under 16 years of age to be compliant with various media platforms. By continuing forward, you agree to hold Symmanayah harmless of any influence and or actions that arise as a result of watching, listening, and or viewing the content presented. The views expressed do not reflect the owners, management, and or shareholders of this media platform. Please note, I am not affiliated with anyone or organization with similar names. On that note, my brothers and sisters, gathering the seed. How many of us realize that in order to get quality seeds, there must be a maturing of the plant? In other words, if it's a fruit, when the fruit comes to maturity, the seed is within it. When we harvest the fruit or vegetable or grain, oftentimes the seed is at its time for picking. So in spite of just getting the fruit or the grain for food and eating, let us be mindful of the importance of the seed. Now, I say to you, O Yashar'al, that though the feast time that is spoken of, and I'll share that passage, speaks about a literal gathering together, I submit to you, and I cannot stress enough, how it is attached to a purpose that we should pass on from generation to generation. How many of us have leaders, pastors, community heads, bishops, priests, whatever title they may use or you've given them, How many of them speak of the seed? How many speak of during harvest time, we must be mindful of the seeds to plant more as we procreate, as the nation is built, as we grow? How many have taught this? For such a time as this, O Yashar'al, we must begin to learn all the things that we've taken for granted. We must begin to realize their importance. And I use the term vetting. Vetting, how the feast times, if you can discern the purpose, each feast time brings a purpose that makes for a strong set-apart nation. How can we talk about atonement without harvest? How can we talk about even reaching maturity and reaching that harvest state if there's no Passover? If we ignore the Feast of Unleavened Bread, being able to discern between good and evil? How can we recognize teachers, the groundbreakers, as I mentioned, the first responders, the first fruit? There's a sequential order. If you use that, my brothers and sisters, I believe it will minimize the heartache and the mistakes of being with the wrong camp, the wrong leader, the wrong group. This is a time, O Yashar'al, where you will see in the shaking, those who can discern the life in the scriptures will discern elements, instructions, guidance that will strengthen you, me, us, a set-apart nation. Let's get into some scriptures, my brothers and sisters. And I want you to think about how maturity brings about the seed. And if we know when to gather the seed, we know when to come together. And to have energy to gather seeds, we eat the fruit, we eat the grain, we eat the vegetables. These are all connected and are relative to the literal and spiritual sense of building a set-apart nation. Allow me, my brothers and sisters, to take you to Leviticus. Let us visit Leviticus 23rd chapter. And here we can see where it speaks of the feast of harvest. And we can read Leviticus 23, 17 through 22. It says, bring from your dwellings for a wave offering 2 loaves of bread, 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour that are baked with leaven, first fruits to Yahuah. Now notice, you can't get bread unless you're able to harvest the grain and grind the wheat to get flour. You can't get bread without flour. You can't get flour without wheat. A harvest time, I said to you, had to come through stages. He goes on to say, besides the bread, you should bring 7 lambs, a year old, perfect ones, and 1 young bull, and 2 rams. To bring lambs, my brothers and sisters, they had to eat. So therefore, there was a harvest, some food fed to the lambs, to the rams. Then he says, they are an ascending offering to Yahuah, with their grain offering and their drink offering, an offering made by fire for a sweet fragrance to Yahuah. And you shall offer 1 male goat as a sin offering, and 2 male lambs, a year old, as a slaughter of peace offering. And the priest shall wave them besides the bread of the first fruits as a wave offering before Yahuah, besides the 2 lambs. They are set apart to Yahuah for the priests. And on this same day you shall proclaim a set-apart gathering for yourselves. You do no servile work on it. A law forever in all your dwellings throughout your generations. And when you reap the harvest of your land, notice it's saying reap the harvest, my brothers and sisters. It says, do not completely reap the corners of your field when you reap, and do not gather any gleaning from your harvest. Leave them for the poor and for the stranger. I am Yahuah, your Almighty One. Notice, my brothers and sisters, harvest. This is a time of maturity. This is a time for recognizing the many favors that we've received from the Almighty Father as it relates to food. It is a time to not just eat recklessly, but a time to also preserve for the poor and for the stranger. I say to you that stranger may be those that come to our house who are our brothers and sisters we have not met. Yashar'al, Yashar'al, I speak often in these last several recordings, and I ask the question, are you satisfied with your community head, your leader, your pastor, your priest, your bishop? Are they equipping you with the tools to understand the things that you've taken for granted, that we've taken for granted? How we must begin to wake up and lean into what the Almighty Father's living Spirit is saying to us. Are they sharing with you how one of the purposes of the Feast of Harvest is a time to recognize maturity, and maturity comes by yielding to the living guidance of the Almighty Father, by obeying His 10 Commandments, His laws, His statutes, His living guidance. My brothers and sisters, out of all the time you've attended or read about the feast times, did you give thought that feast times, especially the Feast of Harvest, is also a time to gather the seeds from the mature fruit to ensure the continuation of food? Let me continue. My brothers and sisters, have we discovered the meaning regarding harvest? Consider what happens during a harvest. We identify mature crops. And as I mentioned, mature crops have seeds. The seeds, the mature crops are picked. And if we don't pick them and use them as food in order to take the seeds or the plant for the continuation of that particular grain, fruit, or vegetables, oftentimes through neglect, they drop to the ground. If a fruit or vegetable mature and it's not harvested, it'll drop to the ground. It'll decay. But the seed will be in the ground, and there will be replication of that plant in some instances. It is time, as we begin to eat going forward, let us think about the fruit, the vegetables that we consume. In some cases, there are plants for other benefits, such as flax and cotton, things that are used to make clothes. We must begin to consider replanting. How many set apart Hebrews are talking about? We have seed for you if you can't get into your own community. We have seeds that you can get, that we can send to you so you can grow a planter on your balcony or in your backyard. For those who boast about their communities and show about the abundance of food that they've grown, how many of them have spoken of, we have an abundance of seeds that we can send to you? How many have brought up and said, these are the crops that we harvest and we plant, and how long it takes for each to grow? How many have spoken about rotating the use of a particular plot or piece of land, rotating it so you can still get the benefits? How much education is coming from those, or are they just boasting that they're in a community and that they grow their own food? For such a time as this, when food shortages exist in some areas, how many are teaching how to grow? Yashar'al, or Yashar'al. Where is the legacy teaching regarding harvest, regarding planting, regarding weeding, nurturing, growing, the things that are required to get a yield from a harvest, to get to a harvest point? What are we hearing among Yashar'al? How many are challenged? How many have an idea of what it means to plant a seed and watch it grow, and how to ensure that you'll have food in the coming days. This will soon be a priority among Yashar'al, especially during this final exodus, especially as famine and pestilence increase. Let me continue, O Yashar'al. I want to bring your attention to Matthew 9th chapter. Here we see in the 9th chapter of Matthew, verse 37 and 38, then he said to his taught ones, the harvest truly is great, but the workers are few. Pray then that the master of the harvest will send out workers to his harvest. Pray then that the master of the harvest will send out workers to his harvest. Do you think the Almighty Father will send someone on milk, someone immature, to tend to the harvest? He can. But have you given thought to how the Almighty Father wants us to study, to pray, to gird up and know what is expected from him? Yashar'al, oh Yashar'al, it's time that we stop taking things for granted. If the Master sends us out into the harvest, he equips us with the tools, the resources that are necessary to do what is directed. Harvesting the fruit, the grain, the vegetable, the plant. For whatever uses, he directs us and how to use them and how to preserve them and how to ensure that we have more. There's a lot that we need to be mindful of, O Yashar'al, and I submit to you, the Feast of a Harvest, there's a lot to learn from it. Allow me to present more on lessons that can be learned. In other words, my brothers and sisters, let us stop taking the abundance of favor that we receive from the Most High and watching fruit, vegetable, grain grow. Let us stop taking it for granted. Let us identify those who have been charged to grow food and learn what fruits and vegetables can grow in what type of climates. How many of us have seen any brother or sister who has property and that are growing gardens talk about the seeds, the abundance of seeds, how to store seeds, when to plant? What did it really take from start to finish? And how long? You see, O Yashar'al, there's much to learn about gathering the seed as it relates to the harvest. More regarding harvest, O Yashar'al. Consider John chapter 4, verse 34 to 37. It reads as follows. Yahusha said to them, my food is to do the desire of him who sent me and to accomplish his work. Do you not say there are still 4 months and the harvest comes? See, I say to you, lift up your eyes and see the fields, for they are white for harvest already. He who is reaping receives a reward and gathers fruit from everlasting life, so that both he who is sowing and he who is reaping rejoice together. For in this the word is true, one sows, another reaps. The harvest is white already. And you know why many of us can't see that? Because there are many who are receiving instructions from the Spirit of the Almighty Father that are being rejected. There are pastors, leaders, bishops, community heads that's rejecting obedient ones. Individuals who receive a word from the Spirit of Yahusha. Individuals who are used to be as iron sharpening iron. There are many obedient ones that are being rejected. And many people don't realize by rejecting that individual, it's like rejecting the harvest. Rejecting what they're bringing to the table. Rejecting the fruit of their spirit. as it is quickened by the Almighty Father. It's time for us to begin to realize the literal and the spiritual side of the harvest. It's time for us to recognize how the harvest is white. It's time for us to recognize how, when we talk about the laborers and being sent by the Almighty Father, how this will stir up growth and strength among a set-apart nation. Let me also take you to these words, my brothers and sisters. Matthew. I want to take you to Matthew chapter 3, verse 8 through 11. It says, "Bear therefore fruit worthy of repentance, and do not think to say to yourself, we have Abraham our father. For I say to you, the Almighty One is able to raise up children to Abraham from these stones." Listen carefully, my brothers and sisters. It goes on to say in verse 10 and 11, I'm in the 3rd chapter of Matthew. "And the axe is already laid up to the root of the trees. Every tree then which does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. I indeed immerse you in water unto repentance." This is Yohanan or John talking. He said, "But he who is coming after me is mightier than I, whose sandals I am not worthy to bear. He shall immerse you in the set-apart spirit and in fire." My brothers and sisters, believe it or not, gathering the seed is related to the harvest. Believe it or not, we will come away from taking things for granted. We will begin to recognize the importance of seeds. We will begin to recognize the importance of the harvest from a literal and a spiritual. We will begin to identify those who are walking in obedience and maturity in the spirit of set-apartness and recognize what seeds they bring to us that will strengthen us. You see, my brothers and sisters, oftentimes we fail to realize a seed could mean, oh, I didn't get it. You just now get it. You're just now receiving a word of instruction, a teaching, a directive from the Almighty Father. And now that you have it as a seed, the more you know about it, the more it grows and strengthens within you. It contributes to bearing set-apart fruit. Yashar'al, my brothers and sisters, there are people who would rather have you look at the literal and be satisfied with the literal. And I say to you, to understand the full dynamics of life everlasting, to understand what it means to have a well of set-apart water flowing out of us, we must begin to discern the life in the scriptures and not just read the text from cover to cover. My brothers and sisters, end times require us to recognize gathering the seed, understanding that it is the Almighty Father that sends us into the harvest. Do we know when to yield? Do we know when to put our hands to work? Literally and spiritually. And not everyone is called to grow food, but we must recognize and identify the process. At least we neglect it. At least we eat the fruit, the vegetables, and toss the seeds, and then later on we realize during drought and famine that we don't have any seeds when the famine leaves, or when the drought leaves, or when we relocate to an area where we desire certain foods that can grow there, but we didn't bring the seeds. Gathering the seed. Let us not just say, oh, those strawberries look good. The okra came in great. The mixed greens look good. We see people showing that they've grown and boasting on them having foods. But how much do they talk about the preservation when planting season come again? How much do we recognize? You see, there will be those among us who are guardians of the plant life, who will be called and strengthened to pass on the ways to grow food. And there will be those who will teach other skills, engineering skills, such as purifying water, such as directing water, rainwater, or water from the rivers to where our needs are, building waterways and infrastructure. People talk about the final exodus, my brothers and sisters, but how many people know that we will be required to structure the infrastructure, to build the infrastructure in such a way that will be basic, but it will be sustainable, without the chemicals, without the things that destroy our land and that can destroy us. It's time for us to stop taking things for granted, oh Yashar'al. Believe it or not, there are plans to strengthen all the details and tasks that are required of us. How many of us are aware of plans being said or taught? How many of us can say truly that our leaders are equipping us individually and collectively on what we are to be doing during this famine, pestilence, this plague, this pandemic? Are you satisfied with your leaders? Are you receiving the instructions that you desire? White Rose family has a plan. I speak of it often, my brothers and sisters, and I'll speak of it again. Wouldn't you desire, do you not desire to know of a plan where you can go to proven, set-apart leaders, proven to be have chosen? You see, I hear people say, the Most High told me, and set apart, or my Ruach told me this and told me that. If it doesn't line up with the scripture in whole, it did not come from the Almighty Father. If it conflicts with scripture in whole, I'm not saying if it conflicts with a verse, because a person can take a passage of scripture out of context. It's time for us to recognize the go-to leaders, those we can ask questions as we journey along, as we begin to come together. It's time to recognize structure. Where are the information and resource centers where you can gather the information, resources, supplies, things that assist with you and those around you and Yashar'al coming together even tighter? Where are the teams of individuals with diverse skills that are mentoring or willing to mentor the unskilled and unlearned? Wouldn't you like to see that plan flourish before you? I am compelled to believe that the exit point on the Western Hemisphere is the state of Virginia, or what some will say the Commonwealth of Virginia. I believe the Commonwealth of Virginia is the exit point for Yashar'al when we come together en masse before heading towards the Promised Land. And during these journeys, moving from point A to point B until we reach the Promised Land, how many are talking about identifying safe zones as you migrate, or you can fuel up and refreshing? How many are talking about how to vet and ask questions, how to examine before you stop at someone's camp or a community, how to vet to make sure they are indeed a brother or sister directed by the Almighty Father to supply needs that are necessary to complete the journey? How many of us are witnessing those who are providing support for completing the journey, whether they are in the ranks of those that will be going to the Promised Land or not? They are providing the support for completing the journey. You see, not all will be gathered before the physical return of Yahusha. And that is what I'm saying, the physical return. How many are providing guidance for the set-apart life? Or are they busy showing you what the wicked is doing and showing you the conspiracy theories and talking about the bad that is coming? Wouldn't you like to hear things that feed your focus towards the Most High and preparing you for what is to come for such a time as this? How many are teaching, preaching, providing answers in the midst of growing uncertainty? My brothers and sisters, I want to say to you this. Examine my words. Examine the scriptures. Do they line up? Ask questions and more questions. Seek to discern what is true, what is relevant for such a time as this. It's time to discern. It's time to make a choice. It's time to act. Don't be one who caught up in hearing the words too late. Well, I wish I should have. If only I would have. Learn to discern, my brothers and sisters. Don't spend a lot of time with people that's telling you what's happening, but not what to do. My words to you, O Yashar'al, is seek to discern. Know how to vet, know how to ask the questions and examine the brother, the sister, the camp, the community. Know how to contribute correction and reproof as led by the Spirit of Yahuah in Yahusha's name. Know when to come away or when to purge. If I'm saying anything that contributes towards you growing strong and set apartness, my brothers and sisters, consider sharing, consider subscribing. What if this video, what if this sound of my words, what if these words reach you? Do you think they reach you for a purpose, for a reason? Do you think that now that you have been exposed to this message, I may be the second person saying something that is relevant towards what needs to be done during these end times? I may be the first. How many of us realize that as we gain information that's related to Yashar'al growing closer together, we now have a responsibility on how we manage that information? And what if we missed out? What if we interpret wrongly? What if we did not listen thoroughly to what was being said? By sharing it with someone else and then discussing it, you may catch something that they miss. They may catch something that you miss. There's a lot of noise out there, O Yashar'al. Who's filling your cup with set apart water, living water? Who's giving you instructions to make you in the mirror strong as those instructions are made alive to you, to your spirit? Consider supporting the plan that has been given me. A plan where I shared bullets highlighting some of the dynamics of what to expect. Is it the be-all, end-all? No. Is it a contributing factor to the coming together of a set-apart nation? Yes, it is. Soon, O Yashar'al, warnings and instructions. Soon, my brothers and sisters, guidance and living directives may be hard to find. The scriptures speak of a time where there will be a famine of the word. Will you be among those who can't find, can't discover what is set apart, what is true? Or will you hang on to compromising communities, camps, and fellowships? Will you be the iron sharpening iron? I believe wholeheartedly that we will see a surprise in the coming days. Some of these individuals who are obstacles, who are distractions, who are filled with wickedness, that fail to lift up Yahusha Mashyach, will face sickness to correction and or death in some cases at the hand of the Almighty Father. Pray and watch and behold the words and promises of the Almighty Father. For soon even those who echo the warnings will be used to echo judgment. There are those that I look at, examine, and hear firsthand. And I say judgment is coming to them. And I don't sling names and camps and communities around. But if you desire to ask me what I think about this community or this camp, and it's not about me, not at all. But it is about worshiping and obeying the Almighty Father. If you are uncertain, if you are unlearned, if you are new to this walk, O Yashar'al, set apart one. If you are new and you want to know how do you begin to narrow down whom you should be gathering with, fellowshipping with, engaged in conversation. And I can assure you, if your heart's desires to grow in maturity, you may just be surprised at what has been made known to me. And I will testify of what I've witnessed. And I look at some of these camps and communities periodically to see if things have changed. But I say to you, O Yashar'al, the time will come when there will be a judgment that will be echoed and followed by the power and might of the Almighty Father that will visit these communities, these camps, these fellowships and groups. And we will witness correction for some, sickness and death to others. And some might say he's fear-mongering. Search the scriptures, O Yashar'al. The Almighty Father is not slack concerning his children. And if you want to see more details, if you want to contribute skills, finances, abilities, if you want to be a contributing factor to the plan that I gave you highlights of, reach out, ask me questions. Let's talk about it. Let's work on it. Let's move as we believe we are directed. And those who want to contribute financially could contribute through White Rose Family, through the Cash App, or contact me via email. And I will share with you ways in which you can contribute your skills, your talents, your abilities, your finances, your wealth. There are scriptures that talks about using the talents that we've been given or lose it. Count the cost, my brothers and sisters. Everything that we believe, our expectations that have been shaped from reading about end time prophecies through the scriptures, all that we have come to expect and more will unfold before our very eyes. Will you be among those who recognize the favor that you received and you utilize those skills, those talents, your finances to contribute towards building up a set-apart awakening nation? Or will you be one that said, I had that once upon a time. I used to could do this, but I can't remember anymore. Will you lose your ability to train and develop others? Will you become sick and die? Will you be among those who have a lot of wealth and when the economy collapsed totally, the money is worthless? You see, my brothers and sisters, the time is coming where water, fresh water, food, fresh air, safety and shelter will be the currency. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al, I cannot stress enough. Gathering the seed requires maturity and identifying what is the seed, what type of seed, how much seed do we need to plant to ensure our sustainability as our numbers swell. The harvest is not just about gathering and eating up and consuming or using up. Gathering the seed, managing our sustainability. True enough, these will not be the concerns of everyone, but there are leaders. There will be shepherds. There will be those with skill sets whose spirit is quickened by the Almighty Father to focus on the literal seed, the literal harvest. But each of us must begin to identify the spiritual harvest, the mature brother and sister, and learn how to be as iron sharpening iron. You see, there will be no rewind buttons. We may have the technology where we can hit rewind, but the things we do today, we can't, and the things we did yesterday, we can't go back to redo them. We can replicate, we can copy, or we can grow beyond, depending on whether it's something that is a necessity for the set-apart nation of Yashar'al for the worship of the Almighty Father. On that note, gathering the seed, it is connected to the Feast of Harvest. And let us remember, let us reflect on all things that bring about harvest and what goes from there. Because as we are able to train our minds and bodies and spirit to understand that there are processes and details, we can begin to recognize that we must be able to identify processes and details for such a time as this. During this time of uncertainty, we must begin to seek out the details and processes that are expected of us, O Yashar'al. On that note, I salute your patience and tolerance. I pray for your good health. I pray that we grow in discernment and all wisdom, and that we respond with correctness. Yashar'al, my brothers and sisters, I salute you, for we are the called ones chosen by Abba Yahuah in the name of Yahusha to bring about contributions to end-time prophecy fulfillment. What say you, my brother, my sister? On that note, I say stay tuned, for I believe there is much more to come, O Yashar'al. Take care and Shalum.